Welcome to Climate Change Reality. The 3 warmest years on record for Europe have all occurred since 2020. We in Ireland are mentioned in the European State of the Climate Report because the greatest deviation from normal sea temperatures was recorded to the west of Ireland in the Atlantic. Finally, swim comfortably. And the air also becomes wonderfully warm. Europe is the fastest warming continent on Earth. Congratulations. What can we do as landscape architects? Not only is Ireland an excellent energy landscape within Europe, we even have a bit too much energy around us sometimes. Like in April this year, when Storm Kathleen gave us a good shake. Wind is Ireland's most effective source of renewable energy. We spent 2 semesters working with final year students on the topic of tailwind for Ireland. Our task: identifying and demonstrating the design potential of landscape design in the context of Irish wind energy and other renewable energy sources. Let me first explain something about the larger context of this studio work. Why are we taking up this topic? Why do we think we are the right people to do this? Rem Koolhaas, Pritzker Prize winner in 2000 and maybe the most famous living architect, wrote the following lines in 2021. There has been no architecture of a similar vigor in the last 100 years. Which architecture he was referring to, I will explain. Koolhaas did not mean the projects of Anne Lacaton and Jean-Philippe Vassal, the 2021 Pritzker Prize winners. Here we see a museum project built by them. Rem Koolhaas' quote refers to something completely different. It is about the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center in Nevada, USA, a collection of faceless big boxes scattered across the landscape like bird droppings, unnoticed by any of the world's design disciplines. Here we see the Tesla Gigafactory in Nevada, where 16,000 people work. These abstract white boxes, writes Koolhaas, which can reach the size of over 100 football fields, are built by people under the age of 32, none of whom are architects. He could have written exactly the same thing about these big guys here. One after the other, they roll into the landscape. Thousands upon thousands of them will be delivered and assembled over the next 30 years. Each of them is larger than the wingspan of the A380, the world's largest aircraft. It doesn't get any bigger. It couldn't be more challenging. Should we ignore them because landscape architecture is not yet associated with them? These super large structures pop up in the middle of the landscape everywhere in Europe and the world. If we ignored them, it would be like not seeing the gorilla in the room. In 1999, Simons and Chabris, in their famous selective attention test, asked subjects to watch a video in which 6 people pass basketballs around. The subjects had to keep a silent count of the number of passes made by the people in white shirts. After completing the task, subjects were asked, "Have you seen the gorilla?" Half of the people who watched the video and counted the passes did not see the gorilla. But it was there. At some point, a gorilla strolls into the middle of the action, faces the camera and thumps its chest, and then leaves, spending 9 seconds on screen. As a design discipline and UCD program, we don't want to overlook the gorilla and dedicate ourselves to the energy landscape of Europe. This is a size comparison drawn to scale. The tallest building in the Republic of Ireland is 79 meters high. The tallest building in Northern Ireland is 85 meters high. The next generation of wind turbines already planned in Ireland is more than 310 meters high, 3.7 times as tall as Ireland's tallest building, 3.7 times as high. This is what we have to design with as landscape people. All the tasks we have to tackle in times of accelerated climate change are very, very big, not small. They are very, very difficult, but that is exactly what a designer is looking for. In our UCD design studio, we try to identify and demonstrate the design potential, the potential of landscape design in the context of Irish wind energy and other renewable energy sources. You will see some examples created by our final year students who will graduate this summer. We did a lot of field work before going into the studio, and my first instruction to the students was simple. Take me to a place where I can hug a wind turbine. Here we can see how this task was accomplished. The decommissioned peat cutters have a strong symbolic meaning in relation to the energy transition, and the constantly rotating wind turbines next to them also speak for themselves. In the field, we experienced that the visibility studies on wind turbines that are carried out so intensively sometimes have no relevance at all, for example, on foggy days. A very concrete field and landscape experience for our students that made us think. I will give a short subsumption based on the midterm status of the works as well as the final presentations. Amaury deals with an issue that is important in a nation where a third of the land is peatlands. Burnamuna, a semi-state company in Ireland, created by the Turf Development Act 1946, formally ended all peat harvesting on its lands in 2019 following a High Court judgment. What remains is 80,000 hectares of industrially exploited peatland that needs to be re-wetted. And of course, these areas are now also suitable for generating renewable energy. Like that, an old obsolete industry undergoes its renaissance as a perpetual industry that not only produces clean energy, biomass, etc., but also creates jobs in regions where jobs are urgently needed. We experiment with AI-generated visualizations that do not replace the classic design perspective, but illustrate the students' basic thoughts and concepts. Please try to understand them as exactly that. A corresponding reality check. In 2024, the European Parliament passed the Nature Restoration Law to restore 20% of EU land and sea areas by 2030 and all ecosystems by 2050. So much is said about the coastal regions of Ireland. Molly focuses on the Midlands, the nation's unloved child. Incredible potential there. I'm excited, I said before the final review, to see if Molly shoots an arrow today and where it will hit on the map, if she shoots. She proposes a kind of new city in the middle of Ireland, equipped with renewable energy, building land, and a workforce. Basically, a very good approach which would give the troubled Midlands a very effective boost. Kieran puts two and two together and dedicates himself to mass rail transport plus the task of electrifying it in Ireland. At the same time, there is enough wind and enough locations for wind energy in Ireland. It would make a lot of sense to bundle new electrified railway lines with wind power generation and new power lines. In times of increasing climate change, such large infrastructure stretches would probably be understood and accepted by many. A few weeks ago, Ireland Electrified, a new representative body, has launched to advocate for the faster electrification of Ireland's heating and transportation systems. Lena looked at the west and west coast of Ireland, which has the most wind but is also the most touristy area in the country. If one were to think a bit more radically, then the west coast and the Atlantic would be opened up for a highly efficient wind industry. Lena dared to think this through and to show it. Aesthetic preferences and societal mindsets can change, and as a design discipline, we have to allow for thought experiments. We as a department and university are deeply saddened by the loss of this young student who recently passed away under very tragic circumstances. May God bless this young talent. Aidan takes up the topic of storing renewable electricity, something that is still in its infancy but will soon appear on the landscape in large numbers. Battery parks, data centers, etc. are huge technical structures whose numbers are literally exploding. They epitomize future prosperity like no other building type of this time. Thinking about the landscape design of such industrial structures is economically worth it on Ireland's landmass loved so much by tourists and locals. Ethan examines the design potential of offshore wind farms above the water, on the water, and underwater. Relatively soon, almost the entire sea view from Dublin will be dominated by wind turbines over 310 meters high. When the turbines appear out at sea, people will want to go there too. For this purpose, suitable spaces and facilities must be designed. Why not create kelp forests along with the wind farms for snorkelers and divers? Rebecca and Isabel are future-proofing college campuses. And they start exactly where one should start, on our own campus. The UCD campus and an associated piece of land just outside Dublin. The future should begin on our college campuses. We have to build the laboratories of the future right here. Visible, progressive, uncompromising. What sheep can endure out there, we as academics must also be able to endure on our campuses. Progressive research pays off. RTE recently launched a news category called Business for Climate. Money rules the world, and also the universities. Owen wonders, offshore energy is nice, but what about sea level rise? At first he thought about the large offshore wind projects off the coast of Dublin. But as he stood on land and looked out to sea, he thought, where I am now, there will eventually be no land left unless something is done. Landscape design methods are used around the world to protect coastlines. It is high time to do the same in Ireland. Studio themes for generations of landscape students. Another quick reality check. Many stretches of the Irish coastline are prone to erosion because of their sandy nature. Climate change makes it an even bigger problem. As she conducted fieldwork in two of Ireland's biggest wind farms, Rosie began to understand that the landscape there was designed on a large scale, but not by landscape designers. The crane assembly areas alone required to erect wind turbines are larger than most city parks in small towns. The industrial landscape of the wind industry can easily also become a kind of adventure land for outdoor enthusiasts. We saw and felt that in the field. Rosie had to fight hard in the studio, but she fought and somehow won in the end. Also, Niamh takes a look at the topic of wind farms on rewetted peatlands, but she develops a typological and pattern-oriented perspective on the topic. Like a designer does, who is not only interested in landscape ecology, but also in landscape aesthetics. Neve showed that landscape can become a machine for sustainable energy production and simultaneous CO2 sequestration. Benedetta realized that wind farms can be transformed into places of high biodiversity, wild and beautiful. The Galway Wind Park, for example, located in the west of Ireland, has the potential to transform into a kind of wilderness where energy is generated around the clock, but where flora and fauna could be maximized as well. It wouldn't matter to the wind turbines, but people and nature would hugely benefit from it. Nothing that comes out of nowhere. Ireland has just announced the newest and largest national park, which includes the purchase of the Connor Pass in Kerry. Joseph, a landscape architect with his own company, works on something like urban districts of the energy transition. Dublin is bursting at the seams. Right now, we could just build the way it would be right. Of course, this would be a completely self-sufficient settlement system based on renewable energy. Tom's approach is about the two sides of the coin. Tom is a hiker and a mountaineer. His home territory is the Dublin and Wicklow Mountains, right on the doorstep of the capital, Dublin. Standing on the peaks or ridges of the mountains, you can see the largely undeveloped mountains in one direction and the densely developed plain and bay that Dublin occupies in the opposite direction. This is confirmed when conducting a systematic viewshed analysis like our student did. And what does this young designer suggest as a result of his research? Instead of hiding the wind turbines, he places them on the crests of the mountain ridges right on top. An incredibly provocative and incredibly brilliant design proposal. In this way, both sides of the coin remain largely intact. I appreciate all of our graduating students as pioneers. Someone has to have the courage to tackle design research like they did. I do celebrate their grit and their hard work. Thank you for your attention.